Hello and welcome to this introduction to ACCA Financial Accounting with Practice Tests Academy. Before we have a look at financial accounting in particular, let's have a look at the applied knowledge level in general. The purpose of the applied knowledge level is to introduce you to the way businesses work and to show you the basics of accountancy and how the accountant's role fits into the world of business. There are 3 papers at this level. Business and Technology, that looks at a business's strategy and the all-pervasive and underlying technology that affects business performance these days. Financial Accounting looks at financial reporting and how we report to external stakeholders in the business. Management Accounting is about the internal role of the accountant to help improve the business's performance by helping it to make better decisions. The financial accounting paper shows us why we need to produce financial reports. It provides the context and purpose of financial reports. It also introduces us to what we mean by good quality financial information and the various different characteristics that are displayed by good quality financial information. We look at double entry bookkeeping and accounting systems and how we record transactions and events in those systems. We also then work to producing a trial balance, including identifying problems within a trial balance and putting those problems right, as a necessary precursor to preparing basic financial statements for both incorporated and unincorporated entities. There is also some group accounts in there, so consolidated financial statements and how they're prepared, as well as how we interpret financial statements, how we read financial statements, and how we understand how well or otherwise the business has been performing. The exam itself is computer-based. It's 2 hours long with a 50% pass mark, and every question is objective test, which is a bit broader than multiple choice questions, as we shall see. So section A, 70 marks, so 70% of the exam. You've got 35 standalone 2-mark questions, quite often prefaced with a small scenario leading into that standalone question. And these are all objective tests, which means you might have to select the right option or classify items in a list as being one of a certain type, maybe select several correct or incorrect options, so for example picking 2 from a list of 4, maybe picking which statements are true or which statements are false, or filling in the gaps, so you might have to type in a number. Now for section B, for the other 30 marks, we have 2 15-mark multitask questions, which is a scenario followed by several tasks. And this section in the exam will focus on consolidation and accounts preparation. There could also be a small amount of interpretation. Once you've prepared your consolidated accounts, you might be required to interpret what you've prepared. It could be for either a sole trader or a limited company. In that section, the questions are mainly drop-down lists or fill in the gaps. So in terms of how you manage your time in the exam, for section A, 120 minutes in total, so that's 1.2 minutes per mark in the exam. So for section A, you want to spend round about 1 hour 15 minutes on that section. I would aim for round about 10 questions every 20 minutes or so. Keep an eye on the clock and look 20 minutes ahead and look at your question number that you're on now and say I'm going to get 10 questions done in that next 20 minutes. When it comes to section B, that gives you around about 20 to 25 minutes per multitask question. Now when it comes to sitting the exam and reading questions, look out for negatively worded questions. Look out for that word not, for example, because that reverses what you're trying to find in the answer. Note the number of options to choose. So if it says choose 2, then there's no point choosing 3 or 1 because you will get the answer wrong. And just be careful of the wording. Quite often when we're reading a question and we're reading the scenario leading up to the question, we form a view in our minds as to what the question we're about to be asked is. And you've got to be careful that that is actually the question that's being asked of you. So read the wording of the actual question carefully. If you're struggling to come up with the right answer in the first place, you can eliminate wrong answers first of all to narrow down your options if some seem obviously wrong. Sometimes as well in some questions you can work backwards from some options that are given to you and see which options appear to work in the scenario. If, particularly in narrative questions, you're given two similar answers, like this is bigger than that and this is below that, then often one of those is right. If you're still stuck after you've tried these techniques, flag it and you can come back to it at the end. You just need to make sure you leave a little bit of time at the end to go back to the questions that you've flagged and have a go at those, even if you need to guess right at the very end. And if you do need to guess, I'm always wary of outliers, so wary of answers that are wildly different from the others. They might not be right. Sometimes they are, but not always. And also a technique of assessing the differences between the answers. If you look at the difference between an answer, you might say, well, that answer includes this amount and that answer doesn't, and I think I should include that bit. So that helps to guide your choice a little bit more. Now, before you get to the exam room studying for FA, book the exam now. Accountants, like lots of people, are very deadline driven people in my experience, so if you get the exam booked in now, it gives you a deadline to work towards and gives you that bit of extra motivation to get the studying done. When you're practicing questions, make sure you practice on computer using the Practice Tests Academy software, and the ACCA have a practice platform as well on their website. And try and stick to time. There's no point spending hours and hours and hours doing questions that you won't have hours and hours to do in the real exam. So try and stick to time when you're practicing questions. In the study period running up to the exam, cover the whole syllabus. Don't pick the areas where you feel most comfortable. That might make you feel confident, but actually you're not helping yourself if you're not focusing on the whole syllabus. There are no optional questions in this exam, so you have to go in fully prepared. Once you've read through your notes, the best way to learn is generally for people through question practice. So rather than sitting with your file for days and days and days trying to learn the material, it's often more efficient and effective to work through questions, and when you can't do a question, then work back into your file to help you. That's a much more active learning process, and it will help it to stick better in your mind. And of course, you should be focusing on the stuff that you can't do in the run-up to the exam. And what I always used to do was keep track of questions, particularly the ones that I've got wrong, and redo them later just to confirm that I've improved since the last time I attempted them. Make sure you keep a diary. What I used to do was have a piece of paper that had every single day between now and the exam, and I would write in each day what I was going to achieve on that day. Sometimes I would say, of course, I'm having the day off, but generally speaking, I'd put something in there to achieve that day. This is what's known as output-based working, as opposed to saying I'm going to study for 3 hours that morning. The problem with setting yourself time-based goals is there's not particularly any incentive to work efficiently then. You tend to slow down, look out the window, take your time, and you just try and fill that 3 hours and then satisfy yourself you've done 3 hours study. What I used to do was say something like, right, I'm going to do these 30 questions now, and when those questions are done on that day, I'm done for studying that day. And that gives you the incentive then to buckle down and get on with the question practice. Take regular breaks, even if you don't feel tired. So if you're going for a 3-hour study session, after 45 minutes, have a 10-minute break. Get up, go and have a drink, walk around the house a little bit, even if you don't feel like you need it at that point, because that will stop you getting tired later on. And just remember, I appreciate, particularly if you're working and studying at the same time, that's hard. It's hard going, but it's relatively short-term pain for long-term gain. Just remember that the rest of your career will benefit from passing these exams, and keep that in focus as you're working through these hard months. All the very best with your studies, and all the very best for the real exam. Thanks for listening.